Right, so Keir Starmer has announced that candidacies have now been opened up for Islington North, finally rubber stamping the fact that Jeremy Corbyn is not going to be standing for Labour as long as Keir Starmer has any say in the matter. Already at least a couple of people, it seems, are willing to try and stand for Labour successfully there by treading on Jeremy's toes. However, last night there was a launch of something new, something that could, well, perhaps be rather big. A list of 15 independent candidates at this moment in time, all standing under the banner of We Are Collective. And one of those candidates listed is a certain Jeremy Bernard Corbyn. However, it is also saying on that page, next to his name, if he stands. Candidacies must be declared by 20th of May for the next general election, so having kept the country waiting for so long, and with just 4 days to go at time of writing before that deadline, not to mention it is now in black and white that he will not be allowed to stand for Labour, not that hasn't been said already in no uncertain terms, will Jeremy Corbyn finally announce he is standing or not? Right, so there is such a thing as keeping your powder dry, and as much as I remain a solid admirer of Jeremy Corbyn, the guy who arguably politicised me more than anyone else, and I'm sure a great many more of my fellow rotten lefties can say the same, it has been exasperating to wait and wait and wait, it seems, for Corbyn to make his move. Come on, Jez, just do it. To take a stand. Now that just days remain for him to still be able to do so, is he going to make that move at all? Well, his appearance on the We Are Collective website list of candidates has certainly fired speculation, but the wording if he stands in brackets next to it is a frustration. It seems that there is some agreement to stand to be on this page, but not that final confirmation. The same is the case for former ANC politician under Nelson Mandela, Andrew Feinstein, who is set to stand against Keir Starmer in Holborn and St Pancras. Again, the whether they are definitely standing is not, it seems, official quite yet. So clearly we're at least part of the way there for them to be on the list. Certainly they're considering it. But will they or won't they? It's still floating in the air at time of writing. But to fixate on them is to ignore the other candidates on that list, of course, standing as genuine socialist candidates against people, incumbents perhaps in many cases, who are anything but that. For example, there's Leanne Mohammed, the young British Palestinian who is standing against Wes Streeting. She is part of this group. Tahir Mirza, the Newham Independent councillor, taking on Stephen Timms. Tasneem Akunji taking on Rushanar Ali and Bethnal Green. Sam Gorst, the Liverpool Independent, taking on Maria Eagle. Others include Liverpool councillor Sean Halsall, Pam Fitzpatrick, Claudia Webb up in Leicester, and a significant list of candidates in other constituencies set to be announced in short order, apparently. But just as we've seen Keir Starmer stand up and sell some pledges today, fixes as he called them, which are complete rubbish to the nation, We Are Collective are all standing on common grounds and have 5 demands, and these are based out of Corbyn's Peace and Justice project. So again, actually, this is another reason why it would be very, very strange if after all of this he isn't standing himself. For the most part, these are good demands, though. They do at least put some specifics on the page, unlike Starmer. The first demand is a real pay rise for all. Good, solid demand aimed at making people's lives just better, with more money coming in, so more money is spent in the economy, making it stronger, while also tackling hardship. And there are specifics there as well, such as above inflation pay rises for public sector workers, our nurses, our teachers, a £15 an hour minimum wage, banning of 0 hours contracts, which Starmer of course has gone back on, and reversing cruel benefit sanctions that only increase hardship and do not incentivise more people to work more. So many politicians talk of hard work, of wanting to work hard. We all want to work hard, don't we? Who actually does want to have to work hard? Work, yes. We want a work-life balance. Why do we want to struggle with it? I've always hated that phrase, hard work. The second demand is for a Green New Deal, which isn't only about investing in sustainable energy, but actually about taking back water, rail and mail into public hands. Renationalisation, so that the investment that has been lacking for decades due to privatisation, due to that money ending up in the pockets of shareholders, happens as well as cleaning up the environment and actually bringing our bills down. The third demand is on housing, an immediate rent freeze and reduction, the scrapping of no-fault evictions, and an urgent mass house building programme. There is nothing there anyone in their right mind can possibly disagree with. The fourth demand, however, is where I do have some issues, and, well, perhaps I'm being nitpicky, but this is how it's presented. It's tax the rich to save the NHS. The taxation does not pay for anything. It's a device to control inflation when the government prints money to spend. So implying taxing the rich will save the NHS, I don't like it. It's a bit of a misnomer. It also implies that the issue with the NHS is one of funding as well, which isn't the whole story at all. It is just that a lot of the NHS funding goes into the pockets of aforementioned shareholders of the outsourcing companies who have taken over NHS contracts under the Tories. Ending outsourcing is absolutely part of the detail on this demand, though, so I wish they'd make that a bit more prominent. They'd focus that on this is more of the problem. It's where the money is being spent rather than there not being enough of it. Focusing on the funding actually misses the point of a lot of the arguments Corbyn was absolutely exposing when he was Labour leader. He was fighting cuts, fighting closures, fighting the outsourcing, the privatisation that all came as part of NHS reforms under the Tories. Telling the truth, talking straight about these things, about the need for renationalisation, why exactly that is, laying out the rationale for it, and why it was needed, because he could point to example after example of where the system as it was failing all of us. He was exposing the truth, and this made the argument for what he wanted to do for him. Bringing that back to just a case of funding, where the establishment was threatened by the truth, calls for more money, well, that doesn't have the same impact. When you get into more of the detail, though, much of this is referred to. So I would make it more front and centre. Reverse the outsourcing, restore the funding to the real NHS, build a national care service and raise income tax on the top 5% of earners. That's all good, but not just for the NHS, all public services, as this pledge actually, when fleshed out, when you read into the details, is actually all about. And the final demand is welcoming refugees in a world free from war. Goodness knows this one will resonate with an awful lot of people right now. Sensible people who don't get off on seeing misery inflicted on people so desperate they tried to flee here in a small boat, or having genocide committed against them, or as the demand says, being scapegoated for an economic crisis that they didn't create. A humane migration system should exist. A legal, safe system should exist. Right now it doesn't. Where people don't die. Surely that's a basic, that's ground zero, isn't it? Surely. That's where you start. That's base level. And it's based on dignity and compassion and treating people like human beings, whilst also giving them the right to work, healthcare and housing, so they're contributing to our society from the get-go, and not just left in hotels or Legionella-filled prison barges or detention centres. There's a leaflet via the Peace and Justice Project that can be downloaded, which goes into these aspects a bit more, very much built on Corbyn's 2017 and 2019 manifestos. His work since with the Peace and Justice Project, his campaigning, and now his name is attributed to an umbrella group of independent parliamentary candidates, which is handy, because independents suffer a lot from being unknown, of people not really knowing what they stand for, and having a banner, an umbrella term, not a party, but a grouping nonetheless to stand under that people can come to recognise in an election campaign, gives these people at national level the equivalent of party level recognition. And with Corbyn's name attached to it, it can go far. Many have wondered whether Corbyn would ever start a new party. This, I think, is as close as you're likely to get to that. And by not being a party itself, it's actually a little bit more clever. At least not at this point. People from other parties or not, who were behind the Corbyn project before in Labour, can still sign up to join this and support this without violating whatever party rules they might be subject to. So it's clever. It's really clever. And therefore, the appetite for Corbyn politics, more of it, if you like, is still there out in the country. The supporters will come. Yet the question remains as to whether that is exactly what will happen, because unless Corbyn is standing, until he confirms it officially, we are still left wondering, will he or won't he? They might be his ideas, his policies, his manifesto positions, his campaign group, but will that be enough without him? I've often mused to myself that after everything he's been through, being put through by the media, by all the false allegations and accusations, the Labour Party trying to bring him down from within, all done to break him as a man, as it were, but more to destroy him and bring his ideas down by association. Has he not done enough? If he doesn't stand, would I blame him? Not at all. But I also don't think the fight has gone out of him yet either. I might debate whether it is fair to put all of this upon him, but then I see him potentially spearheading something here. Where no longer is he having to fight against elements of his own party, but working as a collective with like-minded people from the grassroots to deliver change and challenge those who offer none, as we're seeing across both of the mainstream establishment parties, who basically just take turns in power now to change fundamentally nothing, both serving the establishment. So it's your move, Jez. You've a few days left to declare. In my view, I've never understood what you've been waiting for all this time, to be honest. Surely you knew Starmer would never let you stand for Labour again. The longer it takes, the more support for another run at changing this country for the many and not the few may well have waned. On the other hand, his Labour CLP in Islington North passed a motion 60 votes to 0 to demand they get to keep Corbyn as their MP. Maybe he hoped party structures would fall his way in the end. I hope I'm wrong about support being harmed, though. I'm a cynic. I can't help but think it. I hope people are still filled with anger at the lack of choice, the lack of change on offer, and another roll of the dice with a Corbyn-led campaign, putting everything that enthused and inspired so many in this country, myself included, would be very welcome. Would be welcomed hard and fast, and I'm sure an army of campaigners looking forwards and looking towards the next general election with despair right now might suddenly find something to get involved with again. You can find out all of the details and sign up to We Are Collective at we-r-collective.org and see what candidates might be standing near yourself and where others are likely to be declared within the next several days, presumably, but there isn't long to go. But all eyes right now, despite everything I've said here, that this has to be about more than just Jeremy Corbyn. Well, the eyes are still on you, Jez. So what are you going to do? Labour have announced they are taking candidacies, and already the ever-desperate to be a Labour MP, Paul Mason, has announced he wants to jump in there for Islington North, just like he wanted to be the MP in, was it 3-4 other places already? I've lost count, to be honest. The man's a joke. But a sicker joke is the fact it has already been announced that the Labour Party NEC, so Luke Akehurst presumably then, is going to impose the candidate on Islington North anyway. Labour just treating voters there and their own membership with absolute contempt. But Mason standing, well, frankly, I called that back in March. I covered the man I dubbed Keir Starmer's useful idiot in this video recommendation here, so fill your boots and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.